Thank you so much for stopping in. Um, this is not a transmission; it's a story that I have for you. And I don't know how many of you know, but I am a intuitive conscious trance channeler through automatic writing. So, and those are the messages I give to you, the transmissions I get. I channel personal guides for you. I channel personal guides. I can determine what their vibrational sound is, what your personal guide's sound is, and kind of give them a name so you know who you're contacting. I also am a QHHT practitioner, which is quantum hypnosis healing technique that Dolores Cannon developed, and then she taught it, and then she's passed away. In that, when you're a QHHT practitioner, you regress people, but also one of the things that she taught is you can do group regressions. So over the years, I've done group regressions, and that's the story I'm going to tell to you today. Is about about a specific group regression that I've done recently. It was a group of people, men and women, and actually it was all women. It was all women, and I want to tell you the story. Over the past years, and in this group regression, part of it, you go through different series of investigation. The last part is you regress the group and you give them a choice, because you're going to look at the future. You give them a choice of 100, 200, or 300 years. You regress them so they can look into 100 years ahead, 200 years ahead, or 300 years ahead. We never do them where you might be still living, because Dolores Cannon believed that there's no reason to traumatize somebody if you say you want to look into the future in 20 years, and then they discovered that they've already passed and they might be, 30 years old or what, it doesn't matter. But the policy is that you go out 100, 200, 300 years. I'm going to read what I wrote so I cover everything. Over the past 10 years, over the past 10 years, I have followed what she had done, and then I have done it a number of times over the past 10 years. I've done these group regressions, taken them into 100, 2, 3 year in advance. When participants go into the future, and you have a choice of 100, 200, or 300 years in the future, we do not do short-term futures. We don't allow, I've said that already. The intention is to lead the participant into a future time, a future life. When a participant goes into the future, so when a participant goes into the future, they generally go to see, when they see futuristic images. They see things like hovering vehicles. They feel a constant easy flow and a movement. It's not like hard walking. It's more like floating. It's like moving instead of, stepping, and it kind of, the cars don't rumble around. Everything's floating. Everything's moving around in a very easy, energetic way. That's what participants have seen when they look into 100+ years. And like in moving sidewalks, the sidewalks move, the cars hover. They see themselves, when they look into the future, they see themselves living in sky domes, buildings that float, kind of like, I mean, no, more kind of like the Jetsons. People are in space. A lot of times the people are in spacesuits, unisex suits. They're kind of silvery material, mostly fully covered bodies, or they see themselves as light energy, no physical form. Their surroundings are an open universe. It's not like we see the Earth right now. When they look out, they a lot of times they just see black universe, and maybe some lights, but like stars, but more energy. Instead of calling them stars, a lot of times they see that it's more like energy, but they're light, kind of like stars, the way we see stars. It's nothing like what we live in now. We live in a very concrete life. So what they've been seeing is not like that. It's not like we have now, concrete, asphalt roads, squared off high-rise buildings, a squared off building. In general, just hard buildings. They were soft, they were rounded, they were floating. Or when they see the future, it's floating, rounded. And versus the hard surfaces that we see now, and many types of materials, bricks, metals, framed glass, wood. They see something different, and they're more small. They're smaller type facilities or living places. So what is interesting in the one I have recently done, let me see. And then when they're looking into when they were looking into the future, some were saying they didn't even have to eat. They really didn't have to talk. They weren't eating necessarily. They weren't talking. They were just being who they are. And they talk to each other, but they talk to each other through telepathy. Yeah, in the past. And this was a variety of people. It wasn't just young people and old people. That's what people were seeing when they were regressed and were able to look into the future. They also commented that they felt it was a very cold, unfeeling environment, non-emotional, non-feeling relationships. And they just seem to do their jobs. They just did their day in, day out activities, whatever they were doing, unlike they are in their real life today. It was completely different. There was, in our current time, we're emotional, we interact with people, we have vehicles that plunk along instead of flow, but it was completely different. So this is that was the past. That is what people were generally experiencing when I did past group regressions, and also what Dolores Cannon experienced in her group regression. She did a lot. And it was very standard. The participants, basically, they kept saying the same things. It was just a routine kind of thing. They had always seen that type of futuristic scene, or that they were light energy in a mostly black universe mass. So when they'd look out, they wouldn't see a blue sky like we see. They would just see forever, just a dark, a black. And nothing near what we live today. I did this in 23, this regression in 2023. So nothing like we would have been seeing in 2023. So in this most recent 2023 QHHT group regression, when we got to the future section, where you look into the future, to look at the future, everyone in this group had a different view from the standard view that the previous future group regression people saw. This is what they saw. They saw themselves as a male or female. They had a male or female energy, because they would say, well, I was a male, I was a guy, or I was a gal. They saw themselves dressed in suits with dress shoes. So the men, it was very interesting. The men saw themselves dressed in suits, the way a man in a suit dresses today, and in dress shoes. The fabric was a little different. The fabric was smooth, silvery gray, but not unisex bodysuits. In dresses, and so some of them had dresses on, and shoes. So they wore dresses and shoes. It's what they saw themselves in, and they went to 200 and 300 years out. Nobody picked 100 in that whole group. Nobody picked 100 years out. They picked 200 and 300 years out. And in shirts and slacks. So they were wearing the kind of clothes that we would expect that we wear today, except it had a different fabric. It was a smooth, silvery fabric. They saw themselves as ambitious. They saw their financial success through the building that they lived in and the way they dressed and how they felt. So what they were feeling is that they were their financial success, they felt like they knew that they were successful. They knew they were ambitious. They saw their financial success through the building they lived in and the way they dressed and how they felt. So it wasn't a vision. They saw where they were living, but they knew that they were accomplished because of the way they felt and where they lived. Several of them lived in an apartment. The interior of their home was wood, metal, and big windows, very smooth and clean-cut lines. Very clean, very organized. They said they were married or would soon be. So there were some that were married and some that were soon to be married, male and female, similar to now with less clutter. And they were happy. The other views were being very peaceful. So some of them saw themselves in what I'm going to call a city. They lived in an apartment or a house, but the interior of the house was very clean, not cluttered. There wasn't a lot of things around. It was but they felt good. They felt happy. They felt that they were ambitious in their life and that they were accomplishing what they wanted. And then another group, what they were seeing was it was very, very peaceful in clear, crisp, clean environments. They saw green grass on the ground. They saw trees around them. They saw running water streams, and many of them in that kind of environment, they lived alone in a tiny house, almost like a hobbit house. Some of them lived inside. One of them said that there was a big, they lived at a tree. So there was a way for them to enter that tree. And from that tree, then they had their home. And they said they were self-sufficient. They had very little inside their home, so they were self-sufficient. So were the other people in the cities. They were self-sufficient. They were satisfied. They were very happy. And there was very little inside the homes where they lived on grass by the water. And they didn't need much. They were in a very clean, crisp, peaceful place. The other group saw the current type of living, a family unit. So there were several different groups. And then another group saw themselves in a current type of living. They had a family unit, similar to what we have now. And so then this is what I wrote. I wonder why all of a sudden the future, if it's 100, 200, or 300 years in the future, I wonder why they weren't visualizing as futuristic when they were regressed and went into those. I'm wondering why it's not like it has been in the past. Why now they're seeing very similar to what we are. Like they were seeing something like the Jetsons, but now they're seeing something like we live in now. It's just a little different. I wrote, I almost feel like the future isn't as cold and isolated as we have been led to believe. It is a drastically different view. Maybe some information will come to me about this. If so, I will report on it. So, don't you think that's interesting? I mean, for years and years and years, when Dolores Cannon would do a group regression, we all saw, myself included, we saw future. We saw futuristic hover cars. We were very much alone. There was very little emotional energy that was shared between people. We did whatever we did, and we didn't really interact with other people. And now all of a sudden, this group regression, they're seeing very similar environment to what we see today. I just think that's really interesting. So if I come up with some other information, I will report on it, but I wanted to share that because I think it's really interesting. Like I said, maybe I almost feel like the future isn't as cold and isolated as we have been led to believe. It's interesting. That's it. Thank you so much for stopping in. Please like and share and subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, stay tuned because there's a lot more to come.